This is an overview of Thunderhill West. We're not using the bypass. We're looking at the counterclockwise direction, which is the direction we're going to be using this weekend, this coming weekend. On Friday for drivers to sign up for that, we're looking at changing direction at lunchtime. So starting off in a clockwise direction and then switching to a counterclockwise direction at lunchtime. I'm not going to talk about clockwise. There are videos of both configurations out there. As always, take online videos with a grain of salt. So there's some out there where it's like, you're blowing every corner, dude. So the one that I reference is pretty good. It's got good commentary and decent lines. Okay, so topics that I want to talk about are COVID risk mitigation. Because this is oriented towards newer drivers, I'm going to review a little bit of driving terminology. And then we'll look at the track map. I'll start with an overview of the whole track, and then we'll go in corner by corner with details. And then finally, there's some resources at the end. So in terms of COVID risk mitigation, in registration, we've asked that everyone must be fully vaccinated. Plan was to go on the honor system, although there may be some actual verification of that. So keep an eye on your email to see if there's anything that comes up with asking for people to bring ID or whatever to show that. We're going to ask for masks. Whenever people are indoors, we want masks. And in all meetings, if it's an outdoor meeting and people are spread out, then if there's a congregation of people outdoors, it's best to have the masks on. If you're spread out, no masks. When you're in car with another person, you may think, well, the windows are down and we're going 100 miles per hour. There'll be times when you're just sitting there on pit lane waiting to go on track. So we'd like to really mitigate the risk here. The in-car communicators, we're going to sanitize those between use. So if they're shared, we've got replaceable windscreens on them because you can't sanitize those. So we're going to be taking precautions on there. The clubhouse, we want to reserve primarily for classroom sessions, so we don't end up having everybody congregating in there. It makes it easier to conduct the classroom. Also, it helps with the risk mitigation. We're going to have some outdoor shade areas. It would be best if you have a camp chair to bring that along so that if you're sitting outside in a shade area, you've got a chair to do that. Closed face helmets, I think we'd prefer the mask or a balaclava, something like that. Okay, I got a couple of comments that the links that are put in the chat aren't showing up. I'll resend those later. They come under the resources at the end. Any questions about the COVID strategy? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about cornering. Here is a generic corner. There are many different ways to get a car through a corner. So we'll start with this line here. It's the shortest path. It's unreasonably sharp right there in the middle, so you have to slow down a lot. This line here is much nicer radius in the middle. It's the longest path, but we can do better if we want to look at the radius. If we want to look at that bend in the middle of the corner. This version right here has a much bigger radius, meaning you can take the corner faster. So we've got the inside line, the outside line, and what I'll call the outside, inside, outside line. But there's more to it than that. Let's take a look at this line again, and we're going in this direction. We've got a line here that's different. And the point at which we touch the inside curb, we call the apex. Here we're after the center point. We're a little bit later than the center point. We call this a late apex corner. Why would you want to take a late apex corner? An easy illustration of this is, let's turn that around to where you take the opposite line. Right here, you'll have a little bit of a crisis. You're deep in the corner and suddenly you got to get a lot of turning done. So we call this the early apex line, and you're basically able to go flying into the corner, but then you've got an issue deeper in the corner. So if we go back to the late apex line and look at this, look at the advantages. Coming out of the corner is relatively straight, which means it's easier to accelerate in a straight line. It's somewhat conservative in that I'm getting a lot of my turning done early in the corner. So it's a good starting point. Whenever I'm learning a new track or learning a track with a new car, I tend to err on the side of apexes that are too late. And then I can adjust them earlier if I need to. Whereas if I err on the side of too early, maybe my adjustment is, unbending the car. So with novice students, we tend to focus a lot on late apex corners. One of the things you'll notice is, early on, a couple slides back, I talked about making that radius in the middle bigger. Late apex corners end up requiring me to have a little bit tighter minimum radius and a lower minimum speed in a corner. So in the advanced run groups in A, B, and Group S, we're going to be challenging the orthodoxy of late apexes that you hear all the time. But early on, err on the side of late apexes to stay safe. Okay, next thing we'll talk about, and that'll show up in some of the lines that we draw for these corners. Vehicle dynamics. This will be the shortest lecture ever on vehicle dynamics. The key point is, don't confuse the car. So what confuses the car? It's not enough to just tell you don't do it. What do we not want to do? So abrupt inputs and multiple inputs are things that confuse the car. There will be exceptions to these, but in general, we want to avoid jerking the wheel, stabbing the pedals, and we want to avoid jerking the wheel and stabbing the pedals at the same time. We want to avoid these kinds of things. So let's take a look at a corner here. I start off approaching the corner, I'm in the throttle, I get into the brakes, I'm turning, and then I'm accelerating out. So I've separated out the different phases of the corner. Now there's some subtleties going on here, and we can get into that a little bit. First thing, look at the brake. The color that I use changes as it gets through the corner. So in general, I want to start off with a hard brake, and I want to ease out of that brake as I approach my turn-in point. I deal with advanced students all the time that haven't solved this. So the sooner in your driving career you can address this, the better shape you're in to deal with advanced topics. We don't have to go back and fix this as you try to go faster because you solved it early on. That brake release and steering, there can be some overlap in that. It's called trail braking, and that's a topic that's appropriate for some corners, but not all corners. If you look at the steering, I'm coming with my late apex line. I have a long period of time where I can straighten out the wheel. I can overlap the throttle with that. But the key thing is I am turning the wheel to straighter and straighter, and I can start to overlap the throttle. So those are kind of key points that will show up in some of the lines we're going to draw for these corners. Now, one thing to keep in mind is I've marked all these transitions and so on. There's brake markers, probably not going to be exactly where you want to brake. Often one of those brake markers can be used for your entry turn-in, but it's not always exactly where you want. Often we put apex markers and exit markers in corners. exit also is known as track out. Those cones tend to go away. People knock them over. On day 2 of our schools, we pull the cones away. So you need to be working on visual references other than temporary things. So again, think about, you're going to have brake markers, you have entry or turn in, apex, exit, track out. You want to tie those to things that have some persistence. All right, finally, in this particular track, Thunderhill West, we have a lot of corners that are very close to each other. And if I take that generic line that I drew here, as I'm really laying into the throttle, I got a serious issue. I got another corner right there. If I look at the second corner and look at that, well, now it's also kind of awkward. So what we tend to do is work out a compromise. We have a compromise line. And typically what I do is I sacrifice the first corner for the sake of the second corner. If there's 3 corners, you know, I may be focused on the third corner. There are exceptions to this kind of thing, but a good starting point is sacrifice the first for the sake of the second. So we'll see that as we get through some of these corners. So, okay, let's get started on the track itself. This is an overview of Thunderhill West. North is to the left, south is to the right. And again, we can go take this track in either direction. The traditional direction is counterclockwise. And if we look at that, we'll start here with turn 1. It's really a complex. There's stuff going on here. So my generic corner diagram, suddenly it doesn't fit so well. Turn 2 is an interesting corner that you need to understand the z-axis here. You can't just look at it on a map. There are things going on with elevation and camber that matter. Turn 3 is a fast corner. You can also think of it as a chicane. It's a quick left-right. So these, generic corner diagrams start to look more and more flawed. Turn 4 is so close to turn 3 that you kind of have to consider them together. Turn 4 is what we call a diminishing radius corner. It gets harder and harder as you get through it. Turn 5, again, is a complex. It's a right, left, right sequence. Turn 6 is a pretty big corner. It's got a crest in it. Roughly opposite that corner worker station that's visible there. Turn 7 is a hairpin. 8 is a relatively quick sweeper over a crest again. 9 and 10 are so close, we're going to talk about them together. A couple other important points. We've got start finish, we've got pit out and pit in. Pit out where we leave the pits to join the track, pit in where we go back to the pits or to the paddock. All right, so let's start off with how do we get onto the track? We start off in the paddock. We head south, just to the right. We hang a U-turn. It's going to be important to yield there. There may be cars coming right off the track, right into the hot pits. So don't just drive out there without thinking about it. Consider that there could be cars coming into the hot pits. There's 2 walls there. This wall between the hot pits and the paddock, there will be instructor tents set up here. So students that are going out with instructors, you'll typically meet your instructors there in the hot pits and get going from there. And when you return after your session, you'll go to the hot pits and drop off your instructor before returning to the paddock. Okay, here's how we get onto track. We leave the hot pits and you'll notice there's a dashed line there. That's a blend line. That's a critically important line. We have cars coming through at speed and you want to stay on your side of the blend line all the way through. So that's the blend line right there. This is what it looks like when you're leaving the hot pits. You can see the blend line right there and it curves around into the corner. You need to follow that stay to the right of that blend line all the way. There'll be cars potentially coming at speed. And I don't care if you're the first car out, you absolutely know the track is cold. There's nobody out there. Stay to the right of the blend line, no matter what. You don't know what's going on. No one has perfect knowledge. All right, so here's a view from above, taking a look at turn 2. As you're coming in from the hot pits, you're staying to the right of that blend line and then joining the flow. If you're coming from the track, you're coming through turn 1. This is sort of the tail end of turn 1 leading into turn 2. And here's a compromise line that I've talked about. You're not going to fully exit turn 1, and you're not going to get fully to the right for turn 2. You compromise and go in the middle. As you come through turn 2, there's some nice banking in the middle, but you need to have some patience. I mean, there's some nice banking early on, but as you're in the middle, you need to have some patience with the throttle. The track's going to fall away. The banking's going to go away, and you can get into issues because of that. And you want to unwind out to that track out point. And this is the key thing with the application of the throttle, has to work in concert with your hands coming towards straight. Okay, so another key, I'm going to be pointing out the corner worker stations. Right here, we've got the corner worker for turn 2. You can see this corner worker from quite a distance away. It's important to spot the corner workers early. So here's the view coming from the track, approaching turn 2. There's my very late apex for turn 1, and I should have my eyes way up ahead, see where those cars are. They're not even halfway around turn 2. I should be looking way ahead. And my corner worker station there is kind of right below the rear view mirror there. You should be looking at that because you can see that you can't see. You can't see what's going on the other side of that little brow in the rest of turn 2. So if someone spun out, you want to know early. Okay, here I am roughly in the middle of turn 2. The track's kind of falling away here. I've got no camber to work with. So I need to be patient with the throttle. And here I'm farther through turn 2. I need my eyes way ahead to the exit. Can you see that little cone indicator way off to the left? I still have a long way to go. So don't be mashing the throttle here unless you've got a naturally aspirated four-cylinder with sticky tires. In many cars, you're going to have to be patient with getting to full acceleration. Okay, so turn 3, the key word here in turn 3 is balance. The track is going to tend to upset your car. This triangle in the middle, they've shaved it down a bit, but it still kind of upsets your car a little bit. The curbing can potentially upset your car. So everything you do with your controls, the steering, the brakes and the gas, you want to focus on balance with the car. So the one way to do this is with your brake release, a very gradual brake release. So you're not getting the front of the nose bouncing up. As you come through the corner, you want to have slow hands. So you're not yanking the car through, a quick little corner. You want to have relatively slow hands through this corner. This is a kind of corner where an early gentle throttle will pay off. Get to the throttle early, but don't mash it. Very often when people get to an early throttle, their foot's a little heavy and they get to a little bit too much throttle. So here you want to focus on just touch that throttle and gently squeeze. Again, I got a corner worker station there. So this is what it looks like. I am approaching the turn-in point, which is roughly around that cone. There's some curbing there on my entrance. There's my apex cone right there, and that curbing right there is sort of the second. If you consider it a chicane, that's my second part of the chicane. So you're drawing a line that kind of connects those with smooth, minimalistic steering. Again, I got a corner worker station. It's a long way to the next corner worker. So it's important to keep an eye on that corner worker as you come through, corner of your eye. So turn 4, diminishing radius corner. You'll notice there's not a straight for braking. So I need to make a straight for the braking zone. And you'll see different lines that different people will take. Here's one that may work for many people. Basically, I'm making a straight, I'm getting into the brakes, and I'm easing out of the brakes here as I go along. I'm working my way wide as I'm doing this, which helps me with this diminishing radius corner. Because what I'm going to want to do is take a late apex through this corner. And so positioning myself outside as I approach the corner helps me make that late apex line. It helps me straighten out the exit as much as possible. So if you take an early apex line, it may end up looking something like this, where you've turned in a little earlier and now you have a lot of turning to do. I've seen a lot of cars find the dirt out here. If this happens, don't do anything dramatic. You can go straight ahead and ease back to the track. The track will come back to you a little bit. Where people get in the most trouble when they drop 2 off or 4 off is they start yanking the steering wheel, and you don't want to do that. Bad things can happen. Once you've hit the dirt, just sort of take it and go straight. So getting back to the late apex line, the way to make this happen is you get outside first before you go inside. That whole outside, inside, outside line, we want to make that work for us. This is what it looks like in the car. Here I am sort of finishing up turn 3. I'm looking ahead. I don't see a straight for any kind of braking. So this is where I need to manufacture a straight for braking. Those 2 cars they're a little hard to see. There's 2 cars out there ahead. You can see this car is still outside, waiting for the opportunity to turn in. This car is coming in a little bit. Here I am near the apex corner. So I'm much deeper in the corner. So where should my eyes be? Where am I ready to start unwinding? Am I ready to go straight ahead? So there's my curbing there for my apex curbing. My exit curbing is way over here to the left. And my turn 5 corner station is way over there. So I should be looking left and thinking left. Because when I'm at this apex, I still have a lot of the turn left to do. And if I relax the wheel early, that's when I kind of go straight off into the dirt and leave a cloud of dust and gradually work my way back on the track. Okay, here's the S's. There's the corner worker station that I mentioned earlier. As I come out of 4, I'm going to want to work my way to the left side of track for 5. And what I'm going to want to do in turn 5 is really try to straighten out this complex. Now, my little line is less than a car width, so I'm sort of exaggerating how straight you can be. But in general, you want to be thinking straight and minimalistic inputs. I'm going to have to be prepping for turn 6, so I'm going to compromise the exit a little bit here. So, and I threw in an optional speed adjustment. If you've got a car with a lot of horsepower and not much grip, you're going to want to slow down coming into 5. Very lightweight cars with low horsepower, maybe close to flat coming in. Again, err on the side of going slow until you get to know what your car will do through these corners. So here we are at the first apex curb in turn 5. It's just to the right here of the car. then my second apex curb and my third apex curb off there in the distance. And if I sort of zoom in, I can see there's my straight. It's not exactly straight, but it's close to straight. I want to try to straighten this out. And that the car that's a little bit further ahead is already starting to prep and get the car in position for turn 6. Turn 6. Again, we're looking at a late apex. There's a crest in this corner, roughly in the area of that corner worker station in the bottom right. So a late apex helps with that. This visually is a corner that can very easily draw you into an early apex. You look to the right where the little arrowhead is, there's a little bit of curbing there. That sort of pinches the track in a little bit. So you need to anticipate that. So there's the late apex and the crest. Here I am. I've come out of turn 5. I've worked my way to the right in turn 6. That car way off ahead is roughly around where I need to apex. So you can see there's stuff that looks like it might be an apex that's much earlier than that. You'll end up having some trouble at the exit of this corner if you get drawn into that early apex. Again, there's my corner worker station. Here I am much deeper into turn 6. You can see this little bit of a crest here. You can see the apex cone there that's fairly far along the curbing, and my corner worker station again. So where's my exit? Not visible because of the crest. So this is why this corner in particular, err on the side of a late apex until you really get to know all your visual references and where you want the car to be. It takes a certain act of faith and your line through here that you know where you're going to end up. That's a key aspect of that corner. And it's a relatively fast corner. So turn 7, next corner. This is a hairpin. If you look at it, again, this is an example where's my straightaway for doing the braking? If I look at this corner, a very tight corner like this, a late apex is typically a good idea. Allows me to get on the throttle early and accelerate through the next corner. I want to find a way to straighten the entry so I have a place to do some braking, because I can carry a fair amount of speed out of turn 6. Here's my turn 6 apex is somewhere around here on the left side of the screen. And there's that little curb that gives me a little kink in the road. With many cars, you'll find that you want to have a line like this, which involves a diagonal braking zone. I've kind of created a little bit of a straight to give me some braking, and that straight is not parallel with the edge of the track. As I come through the exit of turn 7, I want to be thinking about turn 8. I'm going to need to get over to the other side of the track. So immediately start thinking about that as you come through the exit of that corner. And you might think, why not do my braking parallel to the edge of the track as I come through turn 7? The issue that comes up is often you have more braking to do than can be done in this little straight. So you may end up with two-phase braking. There may be situations where that makes sense to do two-phase braking, but you'll have to get relatively early, get into the brakes, ease out of the brakes as you add some steering, and then get back into the brakes. There's some corners. One that comes to mind is the top of the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. In that case, it's not so much of a bend, but it's a crest. We need to do a little braking on the uphill, ease out, and then when the car settles, get a little more braking. So there's a way to do two-phase braking. Often with this corner, I like that, sort of make that diagonal and get in that way. Okay, so here's what it looks like approaching turn 7. You can, here's this curbing with that little kink between 6 and 7. And here I am kind of at the beginning of my diagonal braking zone. The car almost straight ahead there is turning in. The second car is somewhere near the apex, approaching the apex. So this is my zone to try to straighten out, get a little braking zone. What a lot of people do is when they're doing this diagonal braking, they don't really fully use the width of the track. And so they end up pinching the entry, which means you're going to be slow on entry. So if you've got a car in front of you and they do the diagonal braking, but you don't, you'll as a reward, you'll see them driving away from you in turn 8. So use that width on your way in to turn 7. Even if you're braking diagonally, brake down towards where that car is. Okay, turn 8. Rotated the view around so that's left to right, coming through the corner like this. Again, this late apex theme. I've got a crest here in this corner, which is one of the reasons why I have a corner worker station there. And I'm going to want to take a late apex through this corner. Let's take a look at what this looks like on track. I'm kind of just finished up with turn 7 here, and I'm looking ahead. This first car here is roughly where I need to be turning in. The second car is not even at the apex yet. The apex is on the other side of that crest. And of course, yeah, there somewhere. And I've got the corner worker station because it's blind. You come flying over this crest, so you want to know there's not a car sideways in the middle of the track there. So especially as you start to pick up speed, this is a quick little corner. So, you know, the corner worker is your friend there. Here I am at the top of the crest. I'm going to come flying down towards turn 9. There's my apex, just kind of right hidden by the car. It's on the downhill side. Next, I'm coming up to turns 9 and 10. These are so close, we can kind of talk about them together. 9 is the right-hander on the left side of the screen, and 10 is the next corner, the final corner in the lap. Let's first start by talking about the runoff area for turn 10. It's very, very tempting to use this runoff area. If you look at videos of cars taking laps of this track, you can see them getting uncomfortably close to the tire wall sometimes when they use that runoff. We would prefer not to use it. Another reason is if you're out there on the runoff and somebody starts to pass you and they're on the track and you're on the runoff, where are you going to go? You know, somehow they got to get that pass done so you can get back on track before the runoff disappears. So there's a couple lines there, and if you're 4 tires across those double lines, you've gone too far. You know, it's not a race weekend. This is a track school, and you know we don't need to get the fastest possible run down to start finish. So try to avoid using that runoff. If you mess up, hey, it's there for you. If you plan on using it and you mess up, well, things can go south quickly. Okay, so the key to making that happen is to have a super late apex here for turn 10. So not just where you touch the inside curb, but the angle that you are at that inside curb. So it would look something roughly like this. You also want to take a late apex here for turn 9. The compromise that you make between here, the shape of the track just sort of leads you as you exit 9. Hold a little steering, that'll get you back to the right for turn 10. And of course, I got a corner worker there as well. So here is the view. I've already come through turn 9. That curbing on the left is sort of my exit curbing for turn 9. Often my exit will actually be a little bit after that exit curbing. And looking ahead, there's my corner worker and those two cars. The first one is close to turn in. The second car looks like it's already turned in a little bit. Here I am setting up for turn 10. You can see I'm to the right side of the road. Where is my apex here? It's actually not in view of the camera. It's pretty far left. If I take an earlier apex using the visible part of the curb, I'm likely to need the runoff area. If I take a later apex, that'll keep me on the main part of the track. Another thing to look for right here is that is where I return to the pits or the paddock. And we'll come back and talk about that. But for now, keep your eyes to the left and focus on start finish. Okay, so we skipped turn 1 because we just kind of came on the track in turn 2. We're going to come back and finish up with turn 1. You can really think of this as 2 corners. We've got a quick left followed by a long right through here. Through the right turn, I want to have a very late apex, way out here. And I need a little bit of a braking zone in the middle of the corner. Usually braking zones aren't in the middle of the corner, but because this is a complex, we're going to see that. The reason for that is the long right is slower than the quick left, right? You could get all your braking done early for the quick left, but then you'll take that corner pretty slowly and it's a long, slow corner. So typically what you do is you take the left a little bit quicker, a little dab of brake or more brake, depending on how fast you took that quick left, and then get yourself set up for the long right. So I end up with a line that looks a little bit like this. You'll see a variety of different lines. And right here, this is paved asphalt on the other side of the curb. A lot of people use that. If you're using that, you can straighten out this quick left a lot more. I took a more conservative line where I'm staying off the curbing. Different cars have different relationships with curbing. And that's one of the things you're going to want to explore is using that curbing on the left side as you come into turn 1. Is that a good thing for straightening out this corner? The more you straighten it out, the quicker it is, the more you're going to have to slow down before you take the right-hander. So the other thing is depending on the horsepower of your car and how quickly you can take that quick left, you may need to brake or lift. Err on the side of going a little bit too slow as you get to know this corner. There is a bit of runoff here if you mess up, but it's one of those things where progressively each lap make little adjustments. And again, here's this compromise line that we talked about at the beginning between turn 1 and turn 2. In my corner worker station, I can see that corner worker very early on, and it's good to adjust early to any kind of flags. So again, the compromise line, here's how that feeds into turn 2. Covered that already. All right, so here I am headed down the main straight. I'm about ready to turn in to that quick left. If I made a speed adjustment of some kind, where I did a little bit of a lift or brush of the brakes, I will have done this by about here already because I'm ready to start turning in. If I look ahead, there's that first apex curb with a little bit of an apron on the left side of that curb. My second curb is right about there. So as I straighten out this quick left, I'm going to sort of thread the needle between these curbs. Here I am at the first curb, and you may be able to see there's this dark patch here, this asphalt. The apex curb in this case is actually well off into what would have been dirt. And and was dirt in the early days of the track, but it's been paved, so you can straighten this out a little, much more. And there's my second curbing there, and the white car here that you can see almost straight ahead. That car is probably sort of tail end of that second braking zone, where he's slowing down for the long right, and the other car is turned in. Here I am in the middle again. This is where I'm doing my speed adjustment for the right-hander. You can see, follow those cars around to the right. That's my true apex, is way over there. So I got a lot of turning to do. That curbing right in front there, you can use it or not. That's not the true apex. Very often the line will take you, curb to curb. But the key, don't get sucked into, there's my apex. The real apex is way over there to the right. And, looking way ahead, there's my corner worker station. In this case, it's good to let the corner worker station draw your eyes so that you can be looking way over to the right and thinking way ahead, so that you don't fall into the trap of thinking, okay, there's my apex. Well, I got to get way over there. So no, it's not my apex. Here I am approaching that second true apex mark here, and there's my corner worker straight ahead. And I can see where the pit lane leads onto the track there to the right. So I'm going to keep my eye, make sure nobody pops out in front of me by violating that blend line. Again, corner worker station there. So that's the track. Let me quickly talk about pit in, and then we can go back and talk about any questions anybody has. So here I've looked at turn 9 and 10 again. 9 is this corner at the top left. 10 is a corner in the bottom right. There's my blend line, that little line right there. I'm gonna get my hand out early. I'm gonna slow down and stay to the right of that blend line. I've got a very sharp left here, so I want to whoa up the car quite a bit to come in this blend line. If I'm dropping someone off in the hot pits, or I'm planning to go right back out, I'm going to take a left at the fork. If I'm coming into the paddock, I'm going to take a right at the fork. And keep in mind, there's going to be speed limits that you don't want to come flying into the paddock or the hot pits at speed. So get it woed down. Okay, so here again is what it looks like. I go to the left to stay on track. I take this little lane here defined by this blend line to go to the pit lane. So resources, there's a track video I used, the still frames from a video by Ian Korf. Here's the YouTube link for that. There's a Thunderhill West track map. You can follow the links